What is the best way to stop Uber and Lyft from taking advantage of drivers? This is going to be a very raw, unedited video where I'm just going to be very blunt and kind of just talk kind of off the cusp about my best advice about this and I think the best way to go about this entire process. But to make it super simple, in one sentence, make rideshare drivers employees. Now, I know I'm going to get 2 responses, maybe 3 right away. One of these responses are going to be like, okay, I want to hear more. The second response is, oh yeah, I agree with you. Like, I want to become employees. But probably the polarizing opposite response of people watching this video is, no, I want to stay as an independent contractor, which is something I will talk about. Now, to kind of back up a little bit, and this is very important, here in California, and I've talked about this before in a couple of videos, but it is very important to look at what other states are doing. Here in California, something passed called Prop 22. And the big question, as you can imagine, was, should rideshare drivers be classified as employees or independent contractors? Now, most drivers who I talked to said, look, I want to be an independent contractor. The main reason why, above anything, which is something I will say I'm going to talk about in a second, is the flexible schedule. Let's be honest. I feel like for 95% of people who start rideshare driving, their main reason is the flexible schedule. You turn on the app whenever you want. You turn it off whenever you want. At no warning to Lyft or Uber, you can just start driving. There's not a minimum monthly quota as well. There's been some programs and companies that I've heard of that say, oh, you need to do a certain amount of sales or rides or whatever every month to kind of stay on board. With Lyft and Uber, if you want to do 100 rides one month and then no rides the next month, you can easily do that. It is truly the most flexible job and the closest thing to being your own boss without being your own boss. So for a lot of drivers, they said, look, that's a big selling point for me. I want to stay as an independent contractor. However, since the past few years and everything, or a couple years or whatever, since Prop 22 got put into place, which kept rideshare drivers as independent contractors, almost every single driver I talked to, and they said, oh, so what do you think about Prop 22? Are you happy you're still an independent contractor? Almost every single one of them said to me, I'm not gonna lie, no, I am not happy I'm an independent contractor because now I feel like I'm being taken advantage of Lyft and Uber more. I feel like Uber and Lyft are taking more advantage of me now that we're basically squeezed into this mindset and kind of squeezed in this legal hole of 100% being an independent contractor. I'm not being taken advantage of more. And this is the big thing. I know for a lot of drivers, they want to stay as independent contractors. There are pros and cons to both. This could be easily an entire other video in itself, talking about like the legal aspects and the financial aspects of employees versus independent contractors, not just for ride sharing, but just in general. But I think the biggest thing overall, like I said, for most rideshare drivers, is the flexible schedule. But I'm gonna be honest, I don't think that that's actually a huge issue. Now, before I get into that, the main reason why rideshare drivers should be employees is you get protected more. When you're an independent contractor, you pretty much have no protection whatsoever. My last video I just posted was me reviewing and talking about this whole kind of situation where both Uber and Lyft are now paying drivers differently for the same exact ride. For one driver, driver A, they might pay him $20 for a ride, but for driver B, doing the same exact ride at the same exact time, nothing different, they might pay him $15, or they might pay him more and pay him $25. This is referred to as algorithmic data discrimination, and I've talked about that, again, in that video, that a lot of people, when thinking of discrimination, think about, male versus female, or they think about white versus black, right? And these are all huge issues. Sexual orientation is another huge issue when it comes to discrimination. However, a lot of people don't talk about the whole algorithmic data aspect. And a big thing, like I mentioned, kind of summing up that entire video, Uber and Lyft are saying, hey, you know what? We just, for a bunch of different reasons, we're going to decide to pay this driver $20 for the same ride, but for this one, for that same exact ride, $15 or $25. As you can imagine, to a lot of people, they might be like, wait, how's this even legal? This should be illegal. You're telling me that if 2 people do the same exact amount of work, same everything same across the board, you just feel like paying one person more or less than the other. But the hard part is when you're an independent contractor, they can kind of do what they want. you don't have as much protection. Another big issue is people being deactivated. I've done videos about this as well. That let's say if there's a dispute between a driver and a passenger, almost always Lyft and Uber will favor the passenger side more than the drivers. So what will they do? They'll deactivate the driver's account. And maybe 2 weeks later, a month later, they might come back and say, oh, you know what? We're sorry. We're actually going to reactivate your account. And on one end, you're like, great, I can drive again. But now you just missed 2 weeks of work. And if you're trying to get ends meet, if you're trying to put food on the table, take care of your family, pay bills, pretty much day-to-day living, that is a huge issue. So overall, being an employee protects you a lot more from a legal perspective and a financial perspective, especially. It protects you a lot more, where Uber and Lyft cannot just do this kind of randomly when they feel like it. Now, jumping back to what I was talking about being an independent contractor, a big thing though, like I said, is the flexible schedule. Could you still have a flexible schedule? And I might as well even say instant cash outs if you are an employee. My overall answer, it would be tough to say exactly 100%, but 99.9%, my answer would be yeah. There was a company I remember in Boston that I actually signed up with. I worked for them for a little bit. And what they did was, it was kind of a blend, or I guess pretty much same thing as Uber Eats, I'll say. Originally, Uber Eats and a lot of delivery services were just food. This company was saying, hey, we deliver everything. So if, let's say, someone wants a TV, you go out to Best Buy and buy the TV and bring it to their house. If they want food, if they want an iPhone charger, whatever the case is, right? So you're doing all these things for them and blah, blah, blah. It's pretty much like an on-demand delivery service for pretty much anything. And I remember, which shocked me a lot, because this is back in 2015-ish, is that I was classified as an employee. I had benefits potentially, depending on what I was doing. Taxes were taken out of my paychecks. And this was so crazy to me, being like, I've never seen a company like this. And the big kicker, I had a flexible schedule. I could work whenever I wanted, yet I was classified as an employee. I got more rights. I got more protection. Tax accounting was a lot easier, let's be honest, when you are an employee than when you are an independent contractor. There were all these benefits to being an employee. And so I got to be honest, looking back on that, of course, rideshare driving and the gig economy right now is very different than the way it was in 2015. But even still, if, let's say, the government came down, the federal government came down saying, you know what, rideshare drivers across the board, federally, not just state to state, but federally, we're making you employees. I got to be honest, I think Uber and Lyft would have to somehow be like, all right, well, the big selling point of driving is a flexible schedule. So we're going to have to try to find a way to just make that work and classify our drivers as employees. A big thing, I think, and I don't want to make this kind of like a conspiracy thing, let's be honest, but a big thing a lot of drivers talk about when it comes to Uber and Lyft, because they've done a bunch of commercials as well, hey, Uber and Lyft really wants us to say as independent contractors. And I'm going to be honest that the main reason why Uber and Lyft says to drivers, hey, do you want to keep your flexible schedule? Stay as an independent contractor. Yes, it is easier, I think, to have a flexible schedule as an independent contractor than as an employee. However, with that being said, the main reason why Uber and Lyft spent millions of dollars in marketing here in California for Prop 22, the main reason why Uber and Lyft constantly sends out emails, I've gotten them, maybe you've gotten them as well, saying, hey, we're fighting to keep you as an independent contractor so you can continue being your own boss and blah, blah, blah. The only reason why they do this is if because you became an employee and drivers became employees, they'd have to do a lot more. You'd be protected more as a driver. There'd be a lot more issues. If, let's say, they pay you based off that algorithmic data discrimination, if they pay you less or more than another driver, that's illegal. If, let's say, they discriminate against you for another reason, that is illegal. If, let's say, they deactivate your account for no random reason, and it's kind of like a gray area, you have more protection from a legal perspective than if you are an independent contractor. And so this is the big thing, just overall looking at this from a meta perspective. A lot of drivers have hit me up saying, hey, Mark, I just don't know what to do. What should we do? Should everybody stop driving for Uber and Lyft? I don't like how they're paying people less, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of talk of how Uber and Lyft treats their drivers like slaves, which is partly true, and they take advantage of a lot of the drivers. This is true as well. And I think, yes, you could get very nitty gritty being like, okay, maybe we remove discrimination. Maybe we remove, I don't know, some kind of issue with deactivation. I'm just using those two examples. For example, in Chicago, I believe it is, they're not putting in a law into place where if you randomly get discriminated, so if you randomly get deactivated, if you randomly get deactivated for pretty much almost no reason or not a legitimate reason, Uber and Lyft has to pay you for kind of your lost time. So there are some like little things being put into place, but at the end of the day, from a meta perspective, the number one way to really ensure that drivers don't get taken advantage of and start being treated fairly, become employees.